This all happened 3 weeks ago, and I'm still getting messages from her and her friends about how I need to talk to her and work things out. Honestly, I think I handled this exactly right, and I don't see why everyone thinks I'm the bad guy. Here my girlfriend, Sarah, and I have been together for 2 years and 3 months. We're both 26, and up until this whole situation, I thought we were pretty solid. We live about 40 minutes apart, which isn't ideal, but we make it work. She's got this friend group from college that she's super close with, and I've always been fine with that because everyone needs friends, right? But now, I can see there were warning signs I should have picked up on earlier. The friend group is made up of 6 people, in total 3 girls and 3 guys who all went to the same state school together and have known each other since freshman year. The guys are Marcus, Tyler, and Josh. Honestly, Marcus has always rubbed me the wrong way. But I never said anything because I'm not the kind of boyfriend who tries to control who his girlfriend hangs out with. Marcus is one of those guys who thinks he's funnier than he actually is, and he's always making comments that walk right up to the line of being inappropriate, but never quite cross it. For example, he'll say something about how Sarah looks good in a certain outfit, then add that it's just his honest opinion as a friend. Or he'll joke about how lucky I am to have her, but in a way that makes it sound like he's saying I don't deserve her. Tyler and Josh are pretty normal guys. Tyler's been with his girlfriend Emma for like 4 years, and Josh is single, but not the type to cause drama. Marcus, however, has been single for the past 1.5 years, and ever since his last relationship ended, he's been getting weirder about boundaries with all the girls in the group. Not just Sarah. The problems really started about 6 months ago, when they all decided to plan a big vacation to Florida for spring break. I know they're all friends and have been taking group trips together since college. Initially, Sarah asked if I wanted to come along, and I said sure, because I like traveling, and figured it would be good to spend more time with her friends and get to know them better. But then, about 2 weeks later, she came to me and said it might be better if it was just the original friend group this time, because they had already made all these plans and reservations, assuming it would be just the 6 of them. I was a little annoyed, but I get it, sometimes friend groups want to do their own thing. I didn't want to make a big deal about it, so I said, fine, have fun, and started planning my own trip with my buddies for that same week, which didn't happen. Then. Things started getting weird with how much time Sarah was spending planning this trip. She was on group chats with them every single day, talking about what they were going to do, where they were going to eat, what bars they wanted to hit, and what beach activities they had planned. I'm talking hours every day. She'd be on her phone texting in these group chats from the moment she woke up until she went to bed. When we were hanging out, watching a movie, or having dinner, she'd constantly be checking her phone and responding to messages about the trip. I started feeling like I was competing with this vacation for her attention. And that's not a good feeling to have about your girlfriend. But I didn't want to be that guy who complains about his girlfriend having friends and being excited about a trip, so I kept my mouth shut and figured once the trip was over, things would go back to normal. About a month before the trip, Sarah tells me that Marcus had suggested they all get matching t-shirts made for the group, not just regular t-shirts, but these custom ones with an inside joke from college printed on them, along with all their names on the back, like they were a sports team or something. She showed me the design, and it was honestly pretty cringe. But whatever, if that's what they wanted to do, then fine. Then she tells me Marcus also suggested they all get temporary tattoos of the same design to wear during the trip for photos. And I'm thinking this is getting out of hand. It felt a little weird that everyone was 26 years old, not 19. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be the boyfriend who ruined his girlfriend's fun right before the trip. Sarah basically moved in with me, claiming it was easier to pack and get ready at my place since I had more space. But instead of packing, she spent every waking moment on her phone in a group chat. At night, she would lie in my bed, scrolling through hundreds of messages about the most random stuff, like whether they should bring a cooler to the beach, or what time to leave for dinner each night. I started feeling invisible in my own house. And that's when I realized this wasn't just her being excited for a trip with friends. It was about her prioritizing everything and everyone related to the trip over our relationship and over me. Still, I kept quiet, thinking that once the trip was over and she got it out of her system, everything would go back to normal. The night before they were supposed to leave, Sarah was running around my apartment packing last-minute things, her phone on speaker so I could hear the entire group chat. They were discussing what to wear to some restaurant on their first night, and Marcus kept making comments about how he couldn't wait to see all the girls dressed up and how they would turn heads wherever they went. Then Marcus specifically said something like, "Sarah, you better bring that black dress, you know the one I'm talking about." And Sarah actually giggled and said, "Oh, I already packed it, don't worry." I was sitting there thinking, what the hell? Why is Marcus talking about my girlfriend's clothes? And why is she giggling about it like they have some inside joke about her dress? The next morning, everything went completely sideways. Sarah woke up at 6 a.m., even though they weren't leaving until 10 o'clock, because she wanted to make sure she looked perfect for the trip. She spent 2 straight hours in my bathroom doing her hair and makeup, not exaggerating. I checked the time every 15 minutes, wondering when she would be done. While she was getting ready, she had her phone propped up on the bathroom counter and was video chatting with the girls from the group about their outfits and makeup. I could hear the entire conversation, and it was all about how excited they were and how this would be the best trip ever, and how they had been planning it for months. Then Marcus joined the video call and started saying things like, "Ladies, you're all looking beautiful this morning, and I can't wait to see everyone's travel outfits." Sarah laughed and told him to shut up, but in that flirty way, that didn't really mean shut up. I was getting more irritated listening to this, but I tried to stay cool, so I got up and made coffee and breakfast for both of us, thinking maybe we could have a nice morning together before she left for her trip. I called her from the kitchen to let her know breakfast was ready, and she yelled back that she would be out in a few minutes. 20 minutes later, she was still in the bathroom, and now they were talking about some bar they wanted to go to. The first night, Marcus was saying how he was excited to be Sarah's wingman if any guys tried to hit on her at the bar. Sarah said something like, "I can handle myself, but thanks for looking out for me," and they all laughed. That's when I started thinking this was getting ridiculous. I went to the bathroom door and knocked, telling her that her breakfast was getting cold and asking if she could maybe finish getting ready so we could spend a little time together before she left. She opened the door just enough to stick her head out and told me she was almost done, but this was important because they were coordinating their outfits for photos. I told her I made her favorite breakfast and was hoping we could eat together and talk a bit since she would be gone for a week. She looked at me like I was being unreasonable and said, "Babe, I'm trying to get ready. Can we talk when I get back?" So I went back to the kitchen, standing there looking at the nice breakfast I made, now getting cold on the counter. Realized I had barely had a real conversation with my girlfriend in weeks because she had been so consumed with planning this trip. I was still listening to her in the bathroom talking to Marcus and the others about their plans, and I suddenly felt like a stranger in my own relationship. That's when I decided I needed to have a conversation with her about priorities and communication. Not a fight, just a conversation about how I've been feeling disconnected from her lately, and how I think we need to make more effort to prioritize our relationship. So when she finally comes out of the bathroom looking absolutely gorgeous, I have to admit I tell her she looks beautiful, and ask if we can sit down and eat breakfast together to talk about a few things. She checks her phone immediately and says, the group is about to start driving, and she needs to finish packing her last few things. I tell her I understand she's excited about the trip, but I feel like we haven't really connected in weeks, and I'd like to talk about that. She's walking around the apartment, grabbing random stuff and shoving it in her suitcase and says, "What do you mean we haven't connected? We've been hanging out every day." So I explain that yes, we've been in the same space, but she's been on her phone constantly with the group chat, and I feel like her attention has been completely focused on this trip instead of on us. I tell her I'm not trying to ruin her fun or make her feel bad about being excited. I just want to make sure our relationship is still a priority for her. That's when she stops packing and looks at me with this expression, like I just said something completely unreasonable. She says, Of course, our relationship is a priority, but this trip is happening right now, and I need to focus on getting ready. We can talk about relationship stuff when I get back. I tell her that's exactly what I'm talking about. She's treating our relationship like something she can just put on hold whenever something more exciting comes up. She gets defensive and says, "That's not what I'm doing. You're being dramatic." So I ask her directly, right now, in this moment, what's her biggest priority, and she doesn't even hesitate before saying, "Getting ready for this trip, and making sure I don't forget anything important." I ask her where our relationship ranks on her priority list right now, and she actually has to think about it for a second before saying, "Our relationship is important, but it's not going anywhere. This trip is only happening once." That's when it hit me like a truck. She just told me straight to my face that our relationship wasn't her priority. Not that it was one of her priorities, but that it literally wasn't her priority at all. She was basically saying that our relationship would always be there, so she could ignore it whenever something more fun came along. I stood there for a minute processing what she just said, and I realized this wasn't about one conversation or one trip. This was about how she viewed our entire relationship. It was the safe backup option that would always be there while she prioritized everything else that was more exciting or immediate. So I looked at her and said, "Okay, if that's how you see it, then I understand." She didn't even register that I was upset. She just said, "Good, I'm glad you understand," and went back to packing. I went to the kitchen and sat down at the table with the breakfast I made that was now completely cold. I started thinking about everything that had led up to this moment. The months of feeling like I was competing with her friends for her attention. The weeks of watching her prioritize planning this trip over spending quality time with me, and now her telling me directly that our relationship wasn't her priority. I realized I was not done with the relationship necessarily, but done with being treated like I was optional. Done with being the guy who was always there whenever she had time left over after everything else. So I made a decision right there at the kitchen table. If I wasn't her priority, then I wasn't going to act like she was mine either. If our relationship could be put on hold whenever something more exciting came along, then I could put it on hold too. I got up from the table, went to the bedroom, and started packing a bag. Sarah was in the living room, still running around, packing and talking on her phone with the group about when they were all meeting up. I came out with my bag, and she looked at me confused and asked where I was going. I told her I was going to visit my brother in Denver for a few days. She asked why I was leaving right now when she was about to go on her trip, and I told her it seemed like a good time since she was going to be busy with her priorities. She asked if I was upset about something, and I told her no. I understood her priorities perfectly, and I was just making my own decisions based on that understanding. She looked at me as if she were trying to determine if I was being sarcastic, but I kept my voice completely neutral and matter of. Then her phone started ringing. It was Marcus calling to tell her they were all meeting at Tyler's house in 30 minutes to load up the cars. She answered the phone and told him she'd be there soon, then hung up and told me she had to leave right away. I wished her a great trip and hoped she got everything she was prioritizing. She gave me a quick kiss and said she'd call me when they got to Florida, then grabbed her bags and left. As soon as her car pulled out of my driveway, I called my brother Jake in Denver. I hadn't talked to him in about 2 months, but we've always been close, and I knew I could crash at his place for a few days if I needed to get away and think about things, Jake answered. And I told him I needed to get out of town for a few days, and asked if I could come stay with him. He could tell something was up, because it's not like me to just decide to leave town randomly, but he didn't ask a bunch of questions. He just said, "Of course," and told me to drive safe. I threw my bag in my car and started the drive to Denver, which gave me a lot of time to think about everything. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Sarah telling me I wasn't her priority wasn't just a heat-of-a-moment thing. It was her being honest about how she truly felt. I began to recall all the times over the past few months when I felt like I was coming in second place to other things in her life. I got to Jake's place around 4 p.m., and he took one look at me and knew something major had happened. He didn't push me to talk about it right away. He just opened a beer, handed it to me, and said I could tell him what was going on whenever I was ready. That night, we ordered pizza, watched basketball, and I told him the whole story. Jake listened without interrupting, and when I was done, he asked, "So what are you going to do?" I told him I honestly didn't know. I just knew I needed some space to figure out how I felt about everything. Meanwhile, Sarah's trip was starting, and I could see on social media that they had made it to Florida and were already posting pictures from the beach. They looked like they were having a great time, and honestly, good for them. That first night, she texted me around 11 p.m. her time, saying they had made it safely and that the hotel was really nice. I texted back, saying that was good, and that I was glad they got there safely. She asked how my day was, and I said, it was fine, that I was in Denver visiting Jake. She asked why I didn't tell her I was planning to visit him, and I told her it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. She didn't respond after that, and I figured she was probably out at bars with the group. The next morning, I woke up to a text from her with a bunch of photos from their first day, pictures of them at the beach and at restaurants. I looked at all the photos and responded with, "Looks fun," and that was it. This pattern continued for the next few days. She'd send me photos and updates about what they were doing, and I'd respond politely but briefly. That was the extent of our communication. I could tell she was starting to notice that I wasn't being as engaged as usual because her texts started getting longer and more detailed, as if she were trying to get me to respond with more than just a few words. Meanwhile, I was having a really good time in Denver with Jake. We went hiking, checked out some breweries, and caught up on everything going on in our lives. It was exactly what I needed, and I realized I felt more relaxed and happy than I had in months. Jake and I talked about the Sarah situation a few more times, and he gave me some perspective that really helped. He said it sounded like Sarah had gotten comfortable taking me for granted, and that maybe some space would help her realize what she was doing. He also said that if someone tells you you're not their priority, you should believe them and act accordingly. On the fourth day of Sarah's trip, she called me instead of just texting. I was out hiking with Jake, so I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail saying she missed me and asking if everything was okay because I seemed different in my texts. She said she wanted to have a real conversation and asked me to call her back, but I didn't call her that day. I wasn't ready to have a big conversation yet. That night, she called again, and this time I answered. She immediately asked if I was mad at her about something, and I told her I wasn't mad. I was just giving her space. She got quiet for a second, and then asked what I meant by that. I reminded her about our conversation before she left, when she said our relationship wasn't her priority right now. I told her I respected that and was just adjusting my expectations accordingly. She started to say something about how I was taking the conversation the wrong way. But then I could hear Marcus in the background talking about going to dinner. She told me she had to go, but we'd talk more later. That phone call lasted maybe 5 minutes. The next day, I decided to extend my stay in Denver. I was supposed to drive home that day, but I was having such a good time with Jake that I realized there was no reason to rush back. Sarah's trip wasn't over until Sunday, and I was enjoying having this time to think about what I wanted from a relationship. So, I called my boss and asked if I could work remotely for a few more days. Luckily, he was cool with it, since I don't usually ask for time off, and I could handle most of my work from anywhere with the internet. That's when Sarah started to notice something was really different. She texted me asking when I was going home, and I told her I had decided to stay in Denver a little longer since I was having a good time. She called me immediately and asked what was going on and why I was extending my trip without talking to her about it. I told her I was doing the same thing she did, making decisions based on my priorities without consulting her first. She said that was completely different because she had planned her trip months in advance and I had just randomly decided to leave town. I asked her what the difference was, and she couldn't really give me a good answer. She just kept saying it was different and that I was being weird and distant. I told her I wasn't being weird. I was being honest about where I stood and adjusting my behavior accordingly. The conversation got a little heated, because she kept insisting that I was misunderstanding what she meant when she said our relationship wasn't her priority. She said she just meant that, at that specific moment, she had to focus on getting ready for her trip. But I reminded her that she had been prioritizing the trip and everything related to it for months, not just that one morning. She got defensive and said I was being unfair and that she was allowed to be excited about a trip with her friends. I told her she was absolutely allowed to be excited and prioritize whatever she wanted, but she couldn't expect me to just sit around waiting for her, to have time for me whenever everything else was taken care of. That's when she said something that really confirmed everything I had been thinking. She said, "I don't understand why this is such a big deal. You know I love you, and you know our relationship is solid, so why can't you just be supportive of me having fun with my friends?" I realized she genuinely didn't understand the problem. In her mind, because she loved me, and because our relationship was solid, that meant she could treat it as less important than everything else, assuming it would always be there. She saw our relationship as so secure that it didn't need attention. I told her that love wasn't enough if it wasn't backed up by actions and choices. I said that telling someone they're not your priority, and then expecting them to be okay with that, just because you love them, was not how healthy relationships work. She got quiet, and then said she needed to think about what I was saying. I told her that was fine. She should take all the time she needed to think, and I was going to keep enjoying my time in Denver. The rest of her trip was weird. She kept texting me sporadically, but the tone was different, like she was testing to see how I would respond. She'd send me photos, and I'd respond politely, but I wasn't engaging the way I used to. I wasn't asking follow-up questions or making comments about how fun everything looked. I was treating her updates like I would treat updates from any casual acquaintance. Meanwhile, I was having an amazing time in Denver. Jake and I went to a Rockies game, and we checked out some other activities. We visited some incredible museums and went to a fantastic restaurant in the mountains. I posted a few photos on social media, and I noticed that Sarah immediately started looking at all of them. On the last day of her trip, she called me and mentioned that she had been thinking about our conversation and wanted to talk when she got home. I told her that was fine, but I wasn't planning to be home when she returned because I was still enjoying my time in Denver. She asked when I was planning to come back, and I told her I wasn't sure yet, maybe in a few more days. She expressed that she really wanted to see me and discuss everything in person. I understood but insisted that I wanted to finish my time there first. That's when she started to sound a little panicked. She asked if I was planning to break up with her, and I assured her that I wasn't planning anything. I was just taking things one day at a time and focusing on my priorities. She caught the emphasis I put on the word priorities and fell quiet. Then, she said she was beginning to understand that she had hurt my feelings and wanted to make it right. I clarified that it wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was about our incompatible approaches to relationships. I explained that she viewed our relationship as something stable that could be deprioritized whenever something more interesting came along, while I felt that relationships needed consistent attention and prioritization to stay healthy. She admitted she had never thought about it that way, and asked if we could talk more when she got home. I said we could talk whenever she wanted, but I was going to keep doing my own thing until I felt ready for that conversation. Sarah got back from her trip on Sunday, and I saw from her social media that she made it home safely. That night, she texted me, asking when I thought I might be ready to talk. I replied that I was still in Denver and would let her know when I was ready. On Monday morning, she started calling me repeatedly. I answered one of her calls, and she was crying, saying she couldn't stop thinking about our conversation and realized she had been taking me for granted. She expressed her desire to fix things and asked when I was coming home. I appreciated her time to reflect, but I explained that I needed more time to process things on my end. When she asked how much time, I admitted I didn't know however long it took. That really seemed to panic her. She didn't understand why I was dragging this out and why I wouldn't just come home so we could work things out. I told her I was doing exactly what she had done. When I asked her to explain the difference, she couldn't provide a good answer. She just kept insisting it was different and that she needed to see me. I ended up staying in Denver for 2 more days, during which Sarah bombarded me with messages. She was sending me long texts about how sorry she was and how she realized she had been wrong to prioritize the trip over our relationship. She called multiple times a day, asking when I was coming home. However, here's the thing that really sealed the deal for me. While Sarah was telling me how much she missed me and wanted to fix our relationship, I could see from social media that she was hanging out with Marcus, Tyler, and Joshua. They were posting photos from dinners and bars, clearly continuing the vacation vibes now that they were back home. This confirmed everything I had been thinking about her approach to relationships. When I finally drove back home on Wednesday, I didn't inform Sarah I was coming. I just showed up at my apartment and started getting back into my normal routine. That evening, she texted me, asking if I was free to talk. I replied that I was home, and within 40 minutes, she arrived, looking like she hadn't slept much. She immediately began apologizing and said she understood now that she was in the wrong. She expressed her desire to make changes and properly prioritize our relationship. I listened to everything she had to say. And then I told her that while I appreciated her apologies, I needed to see actions, not just words. I explained that over the past week, I had gotten a taste of what it felt like to be someone's actual priority. I realized that I had been settling for much less than I deserved and understood the meaning of my own priority. When Sarah asked what I meant, I explained that Jake had dropped everything to make time for me when I needed it. He had been fully present during our time together, instead of constantly checking his phone, and he made me feel valued and important. By giving me his full attention, I expressed that this is what I wanted from a romantic relationship to Sarah said she understood and wanted to be that person for me. I told her I hoped this was true, but I needed to see consistent action over time, not just when she was scared of losing me. We talked for a couple more hours, and she kept asking how she could fix things. I told her there was nothing specific she could do. She just needed to decide what her actual priorities were and align her actions accordingly. She said our relationship was her priority, which was good to hear. But I told her the real test would be how she acted going forward, not just what she said in that conversation. That was 3 weeks ago, and honestly, not much has changed. Sarah has been trying really hard to spend more time with me and be more attentive. But it feels forced and temporary, as if she's on her best behavior because she fears I'll leave. Not because she has genuinely changed her perspective on relationships. She's still hanging out with Marcus, Tyler, and Josh constantly. Just last week, they all went to a concert together, and Sarah spent the entire day leading up to it, texting in their group chat about what they would wear and where to meet up. It felt like a replay of the vacation situation. When I pointed this out, she insisted it was just one concert and not the same as the vacation. But I could see her getting that same obsessive energy about planning and coordinating with the group, checking her phone constantly. So, I told her, I thought we should take a break, not necessarily break up, but stop pretending like things were working when they clearly weren't. She freaked out and said she had been trying so hard and that it wasn't fair for me to give up on us. I told her I wasn't giving up. I was being realistic about our incompatibility. She sees relationships as something to be there for her whenever she's ready to focus on them, while I see them as needing consistent prioritization to be healthy. She claimed she could change and understood what I needed from her, but then Marcus texted her during our conversation, and she immediately checked her phone and responded to him. When I pointed out that she had just proved my point, she said, "It was just a quick response and didn't mean anything." That's when I realized nothing was actually going to change. She might be more aware of the issue now, but her instincts and natural behavior remained the same. She was still going to prioritize whatever felt most urgent or exciting in the moment, and expect our relationship to be there waiting for her whenever she was ready to focus on it. So, I told her I thought we should officially break up. She started crying and begging me to reconsider, saying she would do anything to make it work. I explained that the problem wasn't her willingness to do anything, but that she fundamentally didn't understand what needed to be done. Since then, she has been texting me constantly, calling me, and even showing up at my apartment. She got her friends involved, and they've been messaging me, saying I'm being too harsh and that she really loves me and just made some mistakes. But here's what's really telling. Even now, while she's supposedly fighting for our relationship, she's still prioritizing her group chat with Marcus and the others. I can see on social media that they're all planning another trip for next month, and Sarah is participating in all the planning conversations. She tells me that our relationship is the most important thing to her, while simultaneously planning another vacation with the same people who seem to be more important than me. It's as if she learned nothing from this entire experience. I'm not responding to her messages anymore because I believe I've said everything I need to say. I clearly communicated the problem, gave her chances to address it, and she has shown me through her actions that she's not capable of or interested in making the changes necessary for us to work. Some people say I handled this wrong and should have communicated my feelings better from the beginning instead of disappearing to Denver. But I think I communicated perfectly clearly. I told her exactly how I felt and what I needed, and she made it clear where she stood. Looking back, everything that happened afterward felt like the inevitable result of that conversation. I don't think I'm wrong for refusing to be someone's backup plan. I want to be with someone who consistently prioritizes our relationship, not just when they're scared of losing it. I also believe people when they tell me who they are and what matters to them. So, I disappeared when my girlfriend told me I wasn't her priority, and I broke up with her when her behavior didn't actually change. Update 1. Well, Sarah found out about this post. I'm not sure how, maybe one of her friends saw it and recognized the story, but she called me absolutely furious yesterday morning. She demanded to know why I was airing our personal business online and making her look bad to strangers. I told her I didn't use anyone's real names and that I just wanted outside perspectives on the situation. She said it didn't matter because anyone who knew us would be able to figure out it was about her. Then, she accused me of being vindictive and trying to make her look like a bad girlfriend. What's funny is that she was more upset about me posting on Reddit than she ever was about the actual relationship problems. She spent 20 minutes yelling at me about how embarrassed she was that people were calling her names and saying she was a terrible girlfriend. But she didn't spend any time talking about the real problem. Then she said something that confirmed I made the right decision to end things. I can't believe you're letting a bunch of strangers on the internet convince you to throw away 2 years together. I told her that strangers on the internet didn't convince me of anything. Her own words and actions did. I said that if she was more concerned about how she looked to random people online than how she treated me in our relationship, that pretty much proved everything I'd been saying. She hung up on me after that, but then she texted me a few hours later saying she wanted to meet in person to talk without an audience. I told her I didn't think there was anything left to talk about, and that I was moving on. That's when things got really weird. She showed up at my apartment around 8 p.m. with a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout from my favorite restaurant. She said she wanted to cook for me and have a nice evening together like we used to. I told her I appreciated the gesture, but wasn't comfortable with her just showing up uninvited, especially after we'd broken up. She started crying and said she missed me and knew she could fix things if I would just give her another chance. Here's the thing that really got to me, though. While she was standing there crying and telling me how much she missed me, her phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. I could see from her lock screen that it was the group chat with Marcus and the others. Even during her big emotional appeal to get me back, she couldn't ignore the group chat. She kept glancing at her phone, and I could tell she was dying to check the messages. After about 10 minutes, she actually said, "Sorry, I should probably check this, it might be important," and looked at her phone. I just started laughing because it was so perfectly on brand for her. She was trying to convince me that I was her priority while literally prioritizing her phone and her friends over the conversation we were having about our relationship. I told her she should go and that this whole interaction had just reinforced my decision to end things. She got angry and said I was being unfair and looking for reasons to stay broken up. I told her I didn't need to look for reasons. She was giving me new ones in real time. She finally left around 9 p.m. but not before telling me I was going to regret giving up on someone who loved me as much as she did. I told her that if this was what love looked like from her perspective, then we had very different definitions of love. Since then, she's been texting me screenshots of comments from people defending her on the post, like that's supposed to change my mind about anything. She sent me one comment that said something like, "Everyone deserves to have fun with their friends." And she wrote, "See, not everyone thinks I'm a terrible person." I haven't responded to any of these messages because I think she's completely missing the point. Nobody said she was a terrible person for wanting to have fun with her friends. The issue was that she consistently prioritized everything else over our relationship and then got upset when I stopped accepting that treatment also. And this is probably the most telling part, I found out from Tyler's girlfriend Emma that Sarah has been telling everyone I got jealous about her trip and gave her an ultimatum. When she wouldn't cancel her vacation, I broke up with her out of spite. That's not even close to what actually happened. But it shows me that Sarah still doesn't understand, or won't admit what she did wrong. Emma also told me something interesting. During the Florida trip, Sarah was constantly checking her phone and seemed distracted, like she was worried about something back home. Emma asked her about it, and Sarah said she was concerned that I was being weird about the trip. So, Sarah knew I was upset and that there were problems. But instead of addressing them, she just hoped they would go away on their own. Then, when I stopped accepting being treated as an afterthought, Sarah acted like it came out of nowhere. I think I'm done with this whole situation. Sarah can tell whatever version of the story makes her feel better, but I know what really happened, and I'm comfortable with my decision.